And so, welcome everybody to another dissection program. Today's episode is for one of the out of the many beautiful creations by Maestro Mozart. We have one of his very beautiful pieces from the opera Le Nozze di Figaro, the aria by Cherubino, well known as Voi che sapete, but that Katia is going to share us a little part of a surprise that it was for us while we were working on this piece, and that maybe for some of you is going to be a surprise as well.
Ja, Diatribeis Herzensgeht, sprich nicht Liebe, was dir so brennt, sprich nicht Liebe, was dir so brennt.
This absolutely beautiful melody. I really don't know where to start. We have addressed this aria in other seasons before, of course, not at the extension that we are going to have today. And many things we have said about Maestro Mozart. But I think that a good place to start is to say that even though this aria, this voce sapete, is usually given to beginner singers, this is kind of a cruelty because it is extremely difficult. If you ask me, what do you want to sing, Verismo or this aria, I would say Verismo. The orchestra or the piano will always help you. But with such an exposed aria as it is Voike Sapete, because the orchestration is close to very, 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 very light, a very light melody with you in the background, and so it is all your voice and projection and intention. But before we go to that detail, we also need to mention that Katia just sang a part of it in German. Surprise to everybody because Maestro Mozart should have written it in German, provided it was his native tongue. However, he chose to write Le Nozze di Figaro in Italian because he knew that it was the main language in which everybody was composing, but somebody thought that it would be a great idea to put it into German. So why don't we start there, Katia? Because the Voike Sapete melody is very well known because of the words that flow very easily in the Italian language. But when I was talking to you regarding this version in German, I was telling you that I couldn't picture in my mind the harsh sounds of German in such a beautiful flow as the Voike Sapete. So, how did you figure these sounds of an unnatural, an unnaturally harsh language as it is German with a beautiful flow of melody and vowels as it is Italian?
Okay, well, in the first place, hi everybody, and well, I was surprised too when I found this German version because, like we have talked about in another chapters, in another episodes, um, Italian is a self-sing language. If you are speaking in Italian, you are already singing. So I think that Mozart chose Italian not just because it was probably the most popular or common language for operas in that moment, but because of its own musicality. So to sing this in German doesn't feel doesn't feel wrong, honestly, but I think that yes, it's completely different.
But it works. The way I think everybody recognized the melody you sang. Still, you have to do some adjustments so that the melody flows fairly well. We know that the sounds of German are stronger. There are sounds that are even deeper that are not natural. But I think the author of this version in German worked very hard in trying to make it work. But at the end, which one would you choose? Would you stay with the one in Italian or would you take the German one?
No, I will always choose the original language for any work because I think that composer made that choice for a reason. So in this case, totally, I prefer Italian.
Yeah, I adhere to that. The second thing that I wanted to mention just before we jump into the details of this area is that, as you can see on the screen, we have the title Mozart, Voi che sapete, Le Nozze di Figaro, but it says soprano. It is for a voice of a soprano. The role is Cherubino. That's the name of the character there, the young Cherubino. But we have a good number of names who have sung it recently, but it is always a mezzo. So how come that mezzos are singing something that here on the score says it is for a soprano? Truth is that I think it is a little low for a soprano. I think it works much better for the tessitura of a mezzo, but it is weird to read that it is for a soprano, and it is supposed to be based on the original score, so it was really for the sopranos back then. At the end, well, it's good that mezzos have taken over. But we were also mentioning just before we started today's program that, in fact, I know that this is one of the very first areas that Katia learned and that presented on stage. So this is some sort of a contradiction because we say, yeah, it's good that it is mezzos, but Katia, being a high soprano, had it as one of her first areas. So thinking of that moment back then, some years ago, when you started your singing career and you were given this piece by your singing teacher, and now your evolution vocally and dramatically, of course. How do you see the first time you approached to this area like Cherubino? How was the Katia back then, and how is the Katia now? What is your perspective? How has it evolved in the understanding of the music and the characteristics of this area?
Well, now I try to understand why my first teacher thought for for choosing this area for me. And I think that as teachers, probably we have to take several points to pick our students' repertoire. And probably she thought that I would be obligated to work line because it's Mozart. And probably she thought that it would be a good idea because it doesn't have so many high or so many deep notes. So the pitch is like in the middle, and I think that probably she chose this area for these reasons. Um, Honestly, now I think that I can solve the lowest part. I think I can sing it feeling comfortable, but it's not my hit. I wouldn't choose this role. I wouldn't choose this area for me now. I can do it, but no, I prefer to be Susanna, for example.
Well, you can always be the countess.
I can always be Figaro.
Yeah, and okay, it is very interesting when one looks back into the pieces that we learned when we were younger, because you can also understand where were you vocally, and of course many times if you don't remember or if there is no recording, maybe sometimes you recall it and say, I think the result was horrible. Or it was not. Now with a much better understanding of singing, you say, no, there is no way I could have done it properly. Now that you have a much deeper understanding of Mozart, now that you know the true challenges of singing his music, and this is what we are now going to talk about. We have referred in the past that Mozart is anything but easy. Mozart requires a perfect pitch, uh, perfect or very close to perfect homogeneous voice, an excellent fiato, very good impostation. I mean, he needs everything. And if you're singing the Queen of the Night, he needs extreme super high notes. So or Constance, if you're singing any of his higher roles, I mean, he wanted all. High notes, legato, fiato, technique, homogeneity, musicality. We also mentioned in the past, he requires a musicality that also is not that easily found. I took some times in watching some videos, performances of some mezzos around the Voike Sapete. I still adhere to Frederica von Stade. I still prefer her version. Frederica has a very good voice for this role. I was surprised to find a couple of them that I also liked a lot, but of course, among them, I found dozens of horrible results because what we said earlier, you exaggerate anything in Mozart, and people will notice. You notice that it was exaggerated. Um, I don't know what your advice would be, Katya, but for me, it's like taking a column of air and singing all the phrases in that. Of course, you need to breathe. Of course, you're not going to be 3 minutes without breathing, of course. But the example means it's like you take a huge column of air and over, like mounting a wave, you start singing over that wave. No peaks, no lows, moving on that wave smoothly so that the aria flows. Because if you chop it, because if you start, if you attack harder than needed, if you overdo a T, for instance, voi che sapete, if I say sapete, if I say te, you immediately say tete, or what happened? Or if I say voi che sapete, you immediately, even if it's whether it was or it was not in pitch, you notice that there is something wrong with the syllable. You say, voi che sapete che cosa è amore. But if you, che cosa è amore, like more staccato, you do anything out of what is written and it is condemned to failure. That's
Yeah.
why this type of arias make me so nervous.
Yes. One exercise that we work with my students is to sing only with the vowels. When you're able to understand that it's just one line, one phrase, and you can feel like you're walking on clouds, then you can start to work with your consonants and they won't cut the sound. Voi che sapete cosa and it's not cutting off the line.
But again, as we have mentioned in other programs, Katya says as if it was easy. I should just work on the vowels and they will flow like that.
Because I practice every day, so it's easy
Yeah,
now.
so remember that for Katya, everything is super easy. So if you're running into trouble, I understand. We understand. We fully understand. It is just Katya that likes to say that everything is easy. But I understand that it is not. Because behind what she has said, you must be able to articulate with your mouth the sounds, the changes, and make it flow it continuously and homogeneous, which of course is difficult, and mounting on a column of breath. Which, if you are stressed, because one of the things that happens when the singer is under stress and he's is that instead of relaxing the muscles and working properly with the diaphragm, they make it stiff. So instead of being able to work with them, it's so stiff that it even hurts because they say that with having that strength in the ribs and in the diaphragm, they are controlling it and they are doing the opposite. So by the time they are by that time they are already running out of breath. So if you run out of breath, the amor, either you cut it, you chop it, or the final or sounds not well imposted because you ran out of breath. You are so worried about the air. Now it is impossible to give the same quality of sounds to each and every one, and moreover for the finals. Because fortunately, or unfortunately, depends on the way you see it, Maestro Mozart wrote it in blocks, phrases that give you space for breathing. But if you are not smart in breathing, you're going to fall into trouble. Because if by breathing you misplace the instrument, you will have a problem every time you start one of the phrases because you moved something accidentally. I would like to refer to what Katia mentioned earlier, and maybe you can bring that example again. You said that it is not like stopping the car. You cannot sing Voy que sapete, stop in the car, a phrase, breathe, then ignite the car, sing, stop the car, ignite the car, because you're not going to get away with it. Would you like to add to that breathing and the phrases, Katia?
Yes, when you are making this process, try to stay with your high impostation because um, exactly we will uh, find ourselves in trouble if we are singing like Voi che sapete che cosa è l'amor. Though if you're not staying high enough, though your sound will be low pitch and the impostation will not be in the best place either. Cosa you have to restart just where you finished.
And again, that's what adds to what I was telling you. It's anything but easy. You really need to have a very mature technique because only when you have a mature technique, you know where to breathe, you know how to breathe relaxedly, how to capture a good amount of air without losing the impostation, how to go for the following phrase and not lose the pitch. So there are, fortunately or unfortunately, too many things happening, and still you have to make it sound beautiful and very believable.
And funny.
If you're singing Canyo, nobody cares about that because you're going to say no pagliaccio non son. But here you are not doing that. You don't have the orchestra all over yourself. You have almost no instrument with you. So each, not phrase, not word, each of the syllables will be heard by everybody in the audience. So let's move on. So the first phrase is Voy que sapete, que cosa hay amor. We haven't mentioned that. For jumping so quickly into the content and the German and everything, we forgot to say that Cherubino is a young and adolescent guy that is in, I was going to say part of the family, but he's not in really part of the family. And the story around Le Nozze di Figaro is not nice. It's in fact a social criticism towards the right that the people of monies, the people of the la bourgeoisie, had that right to possess, to have access to sexual intercourse of the promised wife of their servants. Now, fortunately, that is supposed not to happen any longer, but I know that there are still some countries in the world where they still keep those rights. And that is in fact the story that Maestro Mozart chose to put into music. And so he does that criticism, or he works on that criticism by Beaumarchais, because the original author of this piece is Beaumarchais. He decides to choose it And some people, I was reading that they say that Maestro Mozart made it lighter, that took away all the drama. But I think that he did something smarter, which is that he kept the drama if you are willing to see it. Because if you pay attention to the words and the things they say, there is no drama. It's just the il Conte d'Almaviva. It's just il Conte d'Almaviva upset because he thinks Cherubino is flirting with the Countess. Um, it is not that he appears to be upset. He's about to send him to war, which means I don't care if you get killed. Of course, he doesn't say it on stage, but when he says "Cherubino alla vittoria, alla gloria militar," he's saying, "I am sending you to war. You will be on the first defense line of defense. If you get killed, sorry for you. If you come back, I don't care, but you are going to war." And it is depicted in the very beautiful Non più andrai, and we all people love the Non più andrai, but that's the true content of Non più andrai. Pretty well disguised in the aria, but that's the content he kept. And in this Voi che sapete, Cherubino is he's an adolescent who is asking those two older women, Susanna and the Countess, whether this might or not might be love. But in this innocence, he's portraying fragility and an awareness that many adolescents do not have. So I also think that Mozart kept this awareness because in the bottom of his mind, I think that Cherubino knows that everybody is using him. In a way, I was reading, oh, Cherubino is a secondary role of the blah blah blah. It's just there to make things funny. No, he's not there to make things funny. If you take Cherubino out of the story, Le Nozze di Figaro doesn't work. He's a key part in the plot of Le Nozze di Figaro. So that he doesn't have many important areas or many important, many, at least in amount of time, participation in singing, it is true, but his role is key. Because had he not chosen to be flirting around everybody, we wouldn't have the Non più andrai, because the Non più andrai farfallone amoroso is for him. The Countess wouldn't be able to take her revenge on the Count Almaviva. It is because Cherubino is there. But the point here, and this is what I don't like if I was Cherubino, is that everybody plays Cherubino. So the Count says, I'm going to send you to war. If you get killed, well, sorry, guy, but this is how it is. The Countess say, I am going to use, because she says, I am going to use Cherubino for my revenge. So Cherubino ends up being played by everyone just because he's a young guy. And that thing I really, really don't like. Because in this area, Voi che sapete, he's opening his heart, his doubts to these two women. He's being very candid. And in return, he will be played by the two elder women, which of course is not fair. Of course, El Conte d'Almaviva shouldn't be doing that, but according to the rights of those days, he had the right to do it. With our days now, with our eyes now, we think he doesn't have it, but back then he had them. So in a way, he was using only his rights. Hmm. But well, those are my thoughts on the role of Cherubino. Would you like to add anything, Katia?
Yeah, well, he's just a boy. He's a teenager, and he's being used for everybody. No one is gonna defend him. If he has to be sent to the war, he will. If he is feeling these sensations, these emotions, and has to ask to somebody that is not part of his family, it's because he's alone. So yeah, it's not a very beautiful role, a very beautiful character. If you think so, it's not nice.
Yeah. Well, when you see it from that perspective, you say, ah, th- it's
A
it's
little Calvino.
yeah, poor guy. But well, fortunately, he was given two pieces, and this one, the Voi que sapete. Going back to the Voi que sapete, so after the Voi que sapete, che cosa è amor, zone vedete, si o lo nel cor. These pauses, I don't know what you think about these pauses. I was thinking just before the program that part of the genius of Maestro Mozart when writing this music, uh, at least from my perspective, is that somehow he tells you where the voice starts and where it ends. It's like he's giving you the entries of the voice perfectly. You know, of course, if you read music, you know when you have to start, but you have to find your place amongst the many instruments, among the many chords. But it is like Maestro Mozart gave you like, hey, it's your turn, you stop here. Hey, it's your turn, you stop here. Because the pauses are natural. The small rest there is a very natural rest, and you continue with then there is another rest, but it doesn't sound unnatural. It's like if you had Mozart in front of you telling you, like if he was the orchestra conductor telling you, hey, it is your rest, hey, you go back in, hey, you rest, hey, you go back in. That's what I find very particular of the music of Mozart. Like he knew how to compose for the singer to be able to understand where his lines are.
Yeah.
And you sing to other roles that are very complicated for Mozart. So
Well, I wouldn't say that Mozart is my specialite. But yes, I'm a Mozartian singer and Mozartian soprano. So I know a lot of arias and Mozart repertoire. And even when it's not easy for many reasons, Mozart is very clear about what he wants. In that sense, it's easy to read. It's easy to understand what is he asking to you.
and besides that, as asking also, I don't know if I can express it correctly, but please provide more information or your perspective, Katia. In a way, Mozart requires the singer to be like introspective in the sense of understanding what he expects the singer to do with his voice. He doesn't give you as many notations as Puccini, as we have shared on the screen. Legato, confondere, and many notes to guide the singer. Mozart does not that. It's like if he gave free liberty for the singer, but he's not really given a full 100% liberty. But like, hey guy, I'm giving you homework. You have to understand how you're going to do it because in this "No, never you you don't have any comment, any note on how he's expecting that sound to be emitted. But you as a singer need to think, do I release more voice? Do I keep the volume? Do I make it a little lighter? So there are all these, from my perspective, what Mozart does. Gives you, here's your material, study, do it better, because if not, everybody will realize that you committed a mistake.
Yeah, well, you have to understand the character and the context, and then you can find between the lines what is Mozart asking for you in this piece or this one another. Um, in this case, well, you are a boy that is discovering yourself. How would you say "Don vedete violone nel cor"? But as you say, Ricardo, for me everything is easy. But it's because I have studied a lot.
But provided that there are many people listening to us who are not or who have not been in singing for that long, or for people who are just lovers of opera, to understand that to make it sound nice takes a lot. We have ahead after the Donne vedete siolo nel cor quello che ho provo, that if you fall, if you commit a mistake in the following eighths, oh, if you exaggerate, if you fall out of pitch, it's not going to sound nice. And this provo needs to sound like I'm not sure how to describe it, but it has to be that change, because the change in the notes, it's very small. We have semitones there, so there is not a huge change, and the voice needs to flow very nicely among them and continue, because it's not like an ornament like in Rossini. It's not Rosina. It's not that, so it has to flow. Continue like if that ornament hadn't existed, but it existed in fact. It's just part of a major assembly of the following phrases. That's why I go back to my comment. It's like you have to do that. There are semitones there. Work your way out and make it sound nicely.
Yes, in this kind of parts of this kind of ornaments, I used to recommend that don't think of every single note as a different pitch. Of course, you need to have the correct pitch, but you will not think because it's not Mozart's idea. Don't try to read one pitch above the other, not up and down. Try to read one in front of the other. There is movement, but it also feels like the same note, like the same phrase, like the same idea. And it gives a sensation that it's just the same note moving a little bit. I
this
think so.
this idea of being the same note, of course they are not the same notes. We know they are not the same notes. And remember that I read the score, the printed one that I have to my right. So in the screen I have left you with the wrong part of the score, but I am going to put it now. Quello che provo. This one, we read it all. We are there now. You have it on the screen. Um, but sorry, going back to the idea of in a continuous, even if it is not the same note, because we know we are singing different notes. That's why at the beginning of the episode I was telling you, it's like you have a huge column of air, and mounted on that column of air, you are singing your notes and your phrases and your syllables and your consonants and your vowels. Because if you're mounted in the same column of air, then everything flows. But if you think of different, I'm going to make a pause nel cor because I have a rest there. Cor, quello che ho provo. Because besides sounding out of place, because you come from a given mood, nel cor, quello che ho provo, you have to find a way that your voice sounds comfortable, because if you don't find a right way to sing it comfortably, you're going to be very tired by minute seconds. If you put way too much pressure in your glottis, you're going to feel like strangled, and the sound will sound like strangled. Because that is one of the many mistakes that people who sing Mozartian roles do. They think that they have to take out all the vibrato and sound very plain, like childish. And they say, oh, it is because it's Mozart. Mozart is not vibrato. No! Of course not. There is no way of thinking that way. Maybe you have misunderstood Mozart, but that is not Mozart. Mozart is a properly sung with a beautiful, controlled, very well controlled vibrato. Otherwise, it's going to sound childish. And this is, even though he's an adolescent, a teenager, the sound is not childish. Again, easy to do. It is easier to say than to do, but to find that area of your voice where you can sing it comfortably, moreover challenging for huge voices. If you have a powerful voice, to try to sing it continuously can be a true challenge. If you have a lighter voice, it's going to be much easier for you. But still, you have to find, if you have a light voice and you make it even lighter, it will not work.
Well, it has to vibrate, of course, but well, it's not Tosca or Madama Butterfly. Quello che io provo. There are styles, and you have to keep the style. My voice is not playing. Quello che io provo. There is vibrato, but it's not a very large one. Take care with that.
I also noticed that the one that I am putting on the screen has an achacatura in Virridiro, and the one that I have printed does not have the achacatura. Well, these things happens. Well, after e Virridiro e per me nuovo capir non so. Uh, Even though we could read all the words of the Voi che sapete, I think that what we can adhere to is to the whole idea, because the whole idea of the aria is, listen, ladies, this is how I feel. This is what I would like to understand of me, of myself. Please help me with that. That's all the idea of the aria. Uh, the overall composition, if you allow me the expression, is very simple. It's not an aria that has several moments, as others that we have had in the dissection, where you have the beginning, sort of a recitativo, then the character sets the situation, then there is suffering, then there is a climax, then there is a go back, and then there is it is not that level of complexity. It is an aria that flows in its moments very easily, and that you can keep the melody very easily because of that. Ta, ra, ta, 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 ta. No matter what the words are in there, you still can keep the melody in your mind. And as in many melodies that we have shared in the past, uh, that's part of what the composers know, that it is easy for the mind to retain. So they say, maybe nobody knows what Carmen says in but you know that rhythm. And of course with some changes in the melody, but that's pretty much the story, or the line of the melody that follows Voi che sapete. Of course, there is a small change. Let me find it. Che ore martir, gelo e poi sento l'alma vampire. Let me find that part on the screen, because I also wanted to talk about the low notes here, because again, you have to go for sort of high notes and find the right sound, so that you don't sound like Azucena in Il Trovatore. because you're querubino. Here it is.
You're a
Uh,
young boy, not a witch.
che ore diletto core martir, je e poi sento l'alma vampar. You don't say par.
No.
You don't let the postation fall into pieces, or you don't go deeply into your chest notes because it is not going to work. So, what is your piece of advice when you know because when you're singing, you're usually worried about the high notes, but it is true that you are also worried about the low ones.
Oh yes, high notes are not a problem for me. um, yes, we have to think that our voice is just one single thing. Not I don't like to think about I have a chest voice, I have a mixed voice, and I have a head voice. Of course I do, but I try to use them, the three of them, the entire time. As high as the pitch is, of course, the chest voice will not be as present as it is in a deepest note. Of course, I know, I understand, but I don't like to think like my voice in different colors and in different places. So if I'm thinking my voice as a single thing, I'm already using my chest voice, of course, but I didn't lose my highest part. It's already high. Ma bam ba. It doesn't sound like ma bam ba. Because I'm Carolina.
Then Azucena tells us about the story of
Exactly.
Strisella de la vie.
Sometimes it works to think the pitch already in the opposite direction. Trying to giving roots to your sound. And it makes it sound homogenic, in the same color.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, she says, Katia says it's easy.
Easy, of course.
Maybe we can remind you that if you want to book an hour of a lesson in singing with Katia, you can always find that in the shop in Kofi. You can book those hours with hers if you would like to go deeply into your voice and the things that she explains. But let's move, as we are almost running out of time, let's move to the end because the end is very interesting. After the done vedete siolo nel cordone vedete siolo nel cor. Mozart many times does not finish with a high note. It is not Puccini, it is not Verdi, it is not Bellini. No, no, car. It is not that. It's completely out of place. I have heard some mezzos that say, well, I'm not going to sing a high note, but I am going to sing nel cor. When you keep cor for longer than needed, again, I insist, Mozart makes such a transparent music, such a perfect music that you notice that something is out of place. So keep a note longer than needed, and people will notice. So adhere with what is needed. So you say, but hey, when are going to be people surprised about my tremendously beautiful and powerful voice? The answer is not in this area. Not here. Here, people are going to listen to the perfection of your diction, of your diaphragm control, the homogeneity of your voice, of the beautiful legato, many other things. But of your powerful voice, this is not the area. Definitely not. Don't even try it, I would say.
Yes, in Mozart we have that the orchestra or the piano in this case in our scores. It's not just supporting you as a bass that can be ignored. Um, as in other songs, we can find that the orchestra is just giving you chords and sounds that support your voice because it's the most important thing of the area. In Mozart, everything is important, and there is always a dialogue with your orchestra or with the piano. So if you are making a longest note at the end, you you are gonna you're gonna ruin the trills we find at the end, and they are as important as the parts that you already sang. So please end up and that's it.
Yeah. Nel core, and you then shut up. Don't
Yes,
add
please.
anything. Please, please don't add anything. Because your satisfaction after having sung this one is the satisfaction that you knew that you did all the requirements. And so the nel core is just a consequence of how you did a great job and not the other way around. Remember that we have said many times you listen to a horrible Gelida Manina, but the tenor has the high C, and so he gets an applause only for the high C because the rest was a disaster. In this case, Mozart is the contrary. You work hard through each of the notes so that you get to deserve the applause. There is no
Yeah.
easy way out in Mozart. There is no way you're going to get away with a good result with Mozart unless you have hard work behind you.
Yeah, you don't have to impress anybody in your latest note. You already did it in the area.
Absolutely. And so we're reaching the end of today's program. Thank you very everybody for listening to us. I really enjoyed every time I have the opportunity of listening Mozart. The non più andrai, by the way, the non più andrai is already scheduled for this October, so we will have an opportunity for non più andrai. I also wanted to just to wrap up, and I think this is important, Katia. When we think of sopranos and tenors and baritones and basses in the Mozart repertoire, they are always sort of lighter voices. The bass in Mozart,
Yes, if you have a big voice, a large voice, I think that is not your repertoire. Not impossible. You can approach to some areas to practice to exercise something in a specific, but I think it's not part of what are you gonna sing usually.
yeah, you'll have to work 2 or 3 times harder than other natural voices for the Mozartian repertoire. But think that if you're approaching to that music, don't approach it with I am going to do it as I do it with Puccini or Verdi or
Not at all.
Leoncavallo. It's not going to work.
No, 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 not at all.
This is a separate way of doing things, as lovable as all the pages of music that Maestro wrote for us. Any final thought, Katia?
Well, we can think of our voices as two different kind of horses. A wild horse, a powerful horse, will work for something, and an elegant horse, a dancing horse, will work for something different. Nothing is better than the other one. They're different, and they work in different situations. So we have to learn from this and from this one, but they have different characteristics, and that's it. Respect your style and respect your voice.
With that being said, thank you very much and see you next week for the following episode of Spectacular Singing. Thank you.